excited about rolling out across the district. And of course, we want to use this opportunity to have this conversation with you about how you probably can become a allyship program trailblazer. Just a reminder, the reason why we're doing this during Hate Crime Awareness Week, it's really important, of course, that one is that we talk about what is a hate crime. We understand what that looks like for people who get victimized or bullied or discriminated against, but also what we can actively do about it. So it was really fitting to ask Charles, who's the Director for Hate Crime Alliance, just talk a little bit about Hate Crime Awareness Week and a little bit about hate crime, and then we'll go really nice segue into the allyship program, which I'll then hand over to Jodie. Just to say, I might have forgotten to mention me. So I'm Zara Niazi, Strategic Equality, Diversity, Inclusion Lead for the Wellbeing Board, and I've been quite responsible to try to coordinate key activities on key dates of significance, just to get all of our place mobilised and acting in the same direction. Because actually, when we do things collectively, we can really go a lot more further. So a really warm welcome to Charles. And I'll ask Jodie to record. I think Jodie's recording now. And if you don't wish to be recorded, please just put your cameras off, and you can use a chat function, and you can come off and you mute if you want to ask a question. So hand over Charles. Welcome, Charles.
Thank you. Thanks, Jodie. And thanks for inviting me along to speak to everybody. So, as Zara's already highlighted, it's actually officially Hate Crime Week next week. Originally, they did start out with this week, and for some reason, it got changed nationally. That's none of our fault. But yeah, my name's Charles Dacus. I'm the Director of Bradford Hate Crime Alliance, and my role is very much around addressing hate crime across Bradford as a district overall, and actually working with the local authority, with the police, victim support, restorative justice, in terms of being able to address hate crimes and actually work with individuals who've experienced that, but also around the education of hate crime and what it is and what it isn't. So really pleased to be here and to spend a couple of minutes just outlining some things before we move into the whole allyship work. So Jodie, next slide, please. So we always get, what is a hate crime? And I think what we have here is a definition that talks about hate crime being motivated by prejudice or hatred against particular people or groups of people or individuals, for that matter. And it can be really centered around the 5 protected characteristics, which are around race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. So all of the characteristics that protect them under that. You'll see that it doesn't include women in that. And I think there's been an interesting debate really as to whether or not it should be. And it is recorded in a couple of police authorities, but to date it's not recorded as a hate crime. The white paper went to the government, and they decide, and there was a decision taken that it wouldn't be a hate crime, but there are other mechanisms in place, and we do work with people around hate crimes that directed towards women. So next slide, Jodie, please. So so we talk about race hate crimes, so we can talk about directly crimes committed directly against people, and that because of their race or their ethnicity, and it might be that people are targeting, as we've seen today, and over the last couple of days, just in Palestine, what's happened there, that people's places of worship, people are attacked because of who they are, and that does happen. It is very much with us today, and under the religious grounds, and I think interesting enough, when we look at religious grounds, and we look at crimes committed against people because of their religion and because of their faith, that actually that is an area that we are seeing an increase in. Interesting enough, when I look at the police data, we look at hate crimes directed at people under race and religion, and we see that it's disproportionately high around faith. And particularly the Muslim faith, interestingly enough, and I think we're identifying that might be because of the way in which it's recorded, but it's disproportionately high compared to the other elements of hate crime. So anti-LGBTQ plus hate crimes, committed against people based on their sexual orientation or their gender identity, and assaulting people, vandalizing people's property, all sorts of things that have happened to people as a direct result of their sexual orientation. And disability, the other area really, disability hate crimes that include, real crimes against disabled people because of it might be assaulting people, or it might be vandalizing their property or the like. What I do find quite fascinating is just looking at the latest data that the police produced, the disaggregated data, that I would have ordinarily said that the greater levels of hate crime are directed towards somebody because of their mental neurodivergent kind of elements of disability. But in actual fact, it's equally as high for people with physical disability, which I was really surprised by and really quite taken aback by, because I would have thought that we'd have had a little bit more, a greater balance really in the way that people are dealt with, but it's not the case. Next slide, John, please. So why is hate crime a problem? Hate crime is a problem because it harms individuals and communities, and it can make people unsafe and feel unsafe and feel unwelcome. It certainly can damage the trust between different groups of people, and it can also lead to more serious crimes and assaults taking place, murder, terrorism. And part of our work and part of my work, I work also on counter-terrorism. So as you can imagine, like last night, we had an interesting discussion with the counter-terrorism team about what the state of alert that we're currently at as a direct result. So, it is a problem, is hate crime, and I think we all have a responsibility to understand that, really. Next slide, John. So the key for me is about what can be done. So what can we do? Because I think oftentimes people say, well, what can I do about it? And I think the education, being educated, educating yourself about hate crime, and understanding really what the impact of that is on people, and what needs to happen. So I think if we all take time to educate ourselves around that, then in actual fact, I think we can be in a better place. I think also promoting tolerance and respect for diversity. I think people often struggle with what that means. How do someone tolerate people or respect someone, the difference? And I think by actually promoting the different values, like Black History Month this month. So actually recognizing the contributions that Black people have made to rebuilding Britain is actually really quite important, significant, and Islamophobia Awareness Month, the month after, again, opportunities really to promote and for people to understand what the impact is that people have on communities. And then enforcing and enforcing hate crime laws. And I think, that actually people do need to take it seriously, and that actually we do need to kind of look at how we can address and enforce this in a much greater way, because oftentimes people will raise their concerns about hate crime and then see nothing happening, so they think, well, what's the point, why am I bothering? It's a real challenge for us to increase the levels of enforcement that comes with that. And certainly the Crown Prosecution Service would really say that, of the crimes that they get coming to them, that 86% of their crimes are successful in terms of being able to prosecute. So there is some success, but it's about confidence and people feeling confident in the processes. Next slide, please, John. So hate crime is a serious problem and can have devastating consequences for individuals and communities, and we all have a role to play in preventing that and creating a more inclusive and tolerant society. Next slide, Jodie. So I think this really kind of sums it up, and this is taken from the Holocaust Encyclopedia, that most often individuals contribute to the Holocaust through inaction and indifference to the plight of their Jewish neighbours. Sometimes these individuals are called bystanders. Next slide, Jodie. So I think for me, it's that thing about, are we a bystander or are we an upstander? And I think Zara will go on later on to talk a little bit more about that in terms of the area she's covering. and allyship. But I think it's just really important is that actually we stand. If we don't stand for things, then actually what is it that we're picking up? How are we addressing issues that people encounter? And actually, there's an old saying that to remain silent in the face of adversity is to side with the powerful. So if we're not saying anything, we're agreeing. And I think that's the bit that we often have to challenge ourselves with. Next slide, Jodie. I think that should be the last one, actually. All right. So I think for me, it's that thing about what do we want to be? Do we want to be an upstander or do we want to be a bystander? And which one is it that you want to be? Because I think I guess, we need everybody to stand up. We need everybody to be challenging. And I think for me, the importance is about challenging in your own right, not waiting for somebody like me to say, oh, you must challenge. It's about how you feel about situations that are encountered. And I think by educating yourself, you can articulate yourself. And it's not expecting you to go out and champion, be stood on top of the Eiffel Tower kind of shouting whatever. It is about working within your own sphere of influence. And I think that's the important bit, because if we can all educate those around us, and particularly those that we love, then actually that will help for us for a better place. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles. An amazing presentation. We will hold for questions towards the end, and Charles, hopefully you'll stick around, won't you, for the next sort of 45 minutes. Brilliant. Yeah. So handing over to Jodie now, just to really nice segue actually about why we're talking about allyship. So Jodie, do you just want to just cover just the first slide and then?
Charles, if we can do a thumbs up that the slides are working.
Yeah, can see that perfectly.
Perfect. Thank you, Zara. So I probably should introduce, I didn't do this yesterday, I should introduce myself. So I'm Jodie Leach. I work for Bradford Council. I work in adult social care as a senior analyst in social care. But I also created, devised and program managed the Respect campaign and the Respect Allyship program that I'll go to a bit more in detail. So just a bit of an introduction to this session, and Zara's already mentioned this, we are looking to roll out a place-based allyship programme across the entirety of Bradford within the public sector. And this session really is to start those conversations about how this could work, how it will benefit people and how it could be implemented. So the slides further on, I will talk much more detail about the allyship programme, how it's worked, some real life examples. And we want to obviously utilise your skills, the people in the room and the people that you work, your colleagues, to co-design the approach about how this could work and how we could scale this up. So after the presentation, there is going to be 2 questions, and it's just for you to think now about these questions as we're talking through the session. So the 2 questions are: what challenges, barriers are there in your organisation or across the place, and how could these be changed? And what would you need to support you to implement allyship into your organisation? So those are the 2 things just to think about. And so I'm just going to pass over to Zara for the next slide.
Thanks, Jodie. So I think it's really important just to set the context about where this is coming from, because it's important for our place-based approach to equality, diversity, inclusion. And for me, it's about getting us all working together and being part of something that we can collectively do together. So this is really important part of the work that we're doing. So I just wanted to mention that, the Wellbeing Board is the lead strategic partnership. So it's the multi-agency partnership board that most of our chief execs sit on, mainly around public sector organisation, the voluntary sector, and we do get some representation from the private sector. And underneath the Wellbeing Board, there is a systems equalities working group. So collectively, these are EDI leads across our system and place, and involves community of interest groups as well. And we've come together to create 10 actions. And I'm just going to give you a high level of what these 10 actions are. But the reason why they're picked is because this is actually a shared ambition across everybody's organisations. So I can see Munir nodding away, and I know I've had lots of conversations with Yorkshire Housing about some of these particular objectives. So I'm just going to quickly just talk through the themes, just so just see if they resonate with you, and just tell you about the kind of things we're wrapping around in terms of that support, so you understand where in the wider scale of things that we're doing work around EDI, where does actually the allyship sit. So the 5 themes are lead inclusively, which is all about focusing on our leadership, governance, and workforce representation. So this is about diversifying right from bottom tier to the senior leadership level. The second one is about making sure we're bridging between our communities and our strategic structures, where communities have a meaningful involvement in making decision making, but also that we're developing closer relationships and trust at the local level. And we know trust is absolutely so important and critical to all of our work in ensuring that we're serving our communities really well, but also that they can get really involved in what we do and how we do it. The third one is about activating diversity. So this is about upskilling our workforce. It's about improving the quality of our service delivery. And also it's about that succession and progress and planning as well, and how we attract talent into our organisation. The fourth one is inspiring belonging. So this is about really celebrating our diversity as a place. So this is about amplifying, getting key organisations working together to look at key dates of significance, Black History Month, Hate Crime Awareness Week, that we're all kind of celebrating in the same way. And we've developed quite a good sort of process with this, actually. One is, we develop online sessions like these, but also we develop communication toolkits for organisations so that you've got some really good meaty information that you could add to your internal intranet or send out to your staff. And the fourth one is about developing more of a way in which we can have more peer-to-peer reviews and give it a bit more encouragement about how we can progress on EDI. And so that's really looking across the whole organisation, as well as coming together to work on equality issues. So that's about cross-sector and cross-collaboration. So women and girls is one that we're really focusing on. Wrapped around all of that is our diversity exchange, which we launched in June. So this is our online one-stop shop portal, and actually it's the umbrella name, if you like, of everything that we run under the 10 actions. And you can find a little bit more information about that on the bradfordwellbeing.co.uk website. We launched something called the Trust Collaboratory. This is about us all working together to improve and increase levels of trust in our communities, but also across our organisations. And actually, we've got a really big event on, which is tomorrow, really to get our frontline staff who work within communities into that space to start really thinking about what does that look like for us when we're looking at improving and increasing levels of trust. Again, another thing that we're looking at scaling up is the allyship programme. So I won't go into too much detail there because Jodie's going to cover that. And our last one is around root at racism. This is about supporting specific themed areas from mental health and employment and organisations about how to be anti-racist. And it's going through a series of check and challenge approaches. So that's basically where this work sits in the wider context of the work that we're doing around EDI. So my last slide, please, Jodie. I just wanted to cover why allyship is so important. Obviously, you've heard from Charles and you'll hear from Jodie about allyship, but I just wanted to cover why this is so important to us, because I think the bottom line is we want everyone in our place to do really well. That is the bottom line. And to be able to realise our ambitions to be a fairer and more equitable place where everybody can feel they belong and they can reach their full potential, we know that allyship is going to be one of the key approaches that we should use. And I just wanted to touch about what allyship requires us to do, really. So it requires us to have sort of that deep education about the communities we're interested in demonstrating allyship towards. That's really important. The second is that to develop allyship, we need really strong foundations of competencies, knowledge and awareness that really turns allyship away from being just a buzzword and actually into sustainable behaviours that create inclusive environments and diverse teams. The third thing is it requires us to have courage and vulnerability and humility, because one, it's about putting ourselves out there. So just going back to Charles' slide about being an bystander or an upstander, we need to be a bit more, out there and putting ourselves in probably situations, not dangerous situations, but putting in situations where we feel confident enough to say something when we see something that is wrong. But sometimes also it requires us to be vulnerable to get things wrong as well. So we may say the wrong thing or we may do the wrong thing, but actually if doing nothing at all is probably worse. The couple of next things is about For me, allyship's about how we engage in conversation and collaboration to create those connections, build trust and psychological safety, which is why central to all of this work that Jodie's going to talk about is also the Allies network that we want to create, which is going to be a space for all of our organisations to meet in one central place. And that's going to be a really important part of building, building the movement, if you like. And the last one is just to help facilitate greater equity across systems, policies, and practices in which we operate, especially when it's difficult. So allyship's going to give us a lot of information about those lived experiences, understanding and connecting with people more deeply, and to be able to advocate with people as well. And I think the more awareness we have about our power and the access that we've got, and the groups that we aspire to serve, we're going to be in a much more better position to leverage those privileges to advocate for the people. So I'm really excited that we're going to have the start of these conversations with you now about how you and your organisations can get involved, and most importantly, become a Trailblazer site. So I'm going to pass over to Jodie just to give us a bit more understanding about the Allyship programme and what it entails.
Thank you, Zara. So just very briefly, the Respect Allyship Programme is a council initiative that I developed, which is part of the Respect campaign. So I'm just going to mention that now. So the Allyship Programme in the council launched in May 2022, so last year, and is a fully intersectional voluntary programme open to all staff. At present, we've got 743 allies that are signed up to the allyship programme in the council, and that's nearly 10% of the entire workforce. So it's really kind of taking big steps. So just kind of to touch on what is allyship? So I know that, Zara, you talked about allyship yourself, but what I wanted to focus on is the second definition on this screen, which is often now used specifically for a person who's not a member of a marginalised group, but expresses or gives support to that group. So the example I always give is, we've mentioned Root Out Racism. I am part of the Root Out Racism programme, so I'm there to support as an ally. And, it's something that we all kind of need to think about, how we can be allies to groups and communities that we're not necessarily part of. So why is allyship important? I'm not going to read through all these, but there was global research done on this, and these were the 7 areas identified from a workplace perspective why allyship was important. And the one that I'm going to focus on is increases employee retention. Everybody who works for an organisation wants to feel like they belong, wants to feel safe, wants to feel included. And the actual aim of the Respect campaign and the Respect Allyship programme is to build an inclusive workforce where everyone can be the true selves at work. And obviously upscaling this is building an inclusive place. So this is what we're thinking about for Bradford. So Respect itself, don't worry, you don't have to write these down. We'll share the slides. I always do these quite quickly. So Respect itself is an acronym, and it stands for the principles, which are rights, equality, speak up, person-centered, education, champion, and think first. So those are the principles that we, within the council, want to obviously roll out across the place, abide by. And each of these then links to either local, national, or plan, incentive, or legislation. So you can see straight away, rights links to the Equality Act. The public sector equality duty is something that we all have to abide by. I won't read through all of the rest of them, but the ones in pink are the ones specifically to the council. But when we think about how we roll this across the place, these can then be adapted to specifically to your own organisation. So equality links to the council equality plan. You may in your own organisation have your own equality plan or your own equality statement. So these can be tailored to every respective organisation. So the Respect campaign, which is the overarching part of the allyship, has got 3 offers, and these 3 offers will and can be available to all organisations. So the Respect Allyship programme, which I'm going to go through in a bit more detail, there's a Respect Awareness e-learning package, and there's a Respect information hub that's built onto a SharePoint site that can be available to anybody external to the council. So the Respect Allyship programme, as I say, was launched last year. And what does it involve? So we offer monthly training sessions that are topic based, every month, a number of sessions, and the allies are offered these sessions to attend. And the purpose of these sessions, and it kind of goes back to what Charles was saying about educating, the purpose of these sessions are to talk about this particular topic, and more specifically about how to be an ally to that group or community. So the sessions will cover, a lot of the kind of history, lived experience. They're also interactive, which means people can ask questions. They act as a safe space so that people can attend these sessions and perhaps ask questions that in a normal environment they may feel uncomfortable or uneasy to ask. They're run by the voluntary sector in the main. So the voluntary sector's got a lot of obviously fantastic resources out there, subject matter experts, and often with people with lived experience as well. The sessions also, after the sessions have run, there's also a paper-based version which covers all the salient points of the session. So if any members of staff are unable to attend, they also will get a copy of the slides with the salient points, so they can obviously find out more about that particular topic. I will say this because it was mentioned yesterday, it's not a program where people have to attend every single session. People can pick and choose which session based on the topic. So any areas of interest they may have, they may attend those particular sessions. So these are, as you can see on the screen, these are all the sessions that we've run since launch. So as you can tell, there is a proper cross-section of the different, and I hate using the term, but protected characteristics. The sessions are fully intersectional as well. Intersectionality is really important when we're talking about equality, diversity, and inclusion. So just as an example, the pregnancy maternity session covered paternity as well. So it made sure that it covered all the aspects. The feedback from the sessions is absolutely fantastic, and I'm all for one, for getting feedback. And often when I talk to people about the impact of the allyship program, people say, well, how do you know it's working? How do you know? So we have both qualitative and quantitative data. So after every session, we send out a feedback evaluation form to the attendees, and the feedback has been overwhelmingly incredible. I want to share one story, which is, often I get feedback from specific delegates that either email me or ring me. So we did the LGBTQ+ awareness session in July. And after the session, I received a phone call from a male colleague who worked for another department than mine, who I've never met. He rang me up, and I'm gonna use his words in this. So he rang me up and said, I attended a session where you presented respect, because I often go out and present respect and the allyship program to groups of staff, and I was inspired to attend one of the sessions. So the first session he attended was the LGBTQ+ awareness, and he admitted quite openly that his views were fairly right-wing. He called himself the typical Daily Mail reader. So he wanted to challenge his own perceptions because he'd only seen one side of the argument. So after the LGBTQ+ awareness session, he rang me and said, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I've never seen that viewpoint. And the person that did deliver the training had lived experience and shared their lived experience. And after the session, I went home and surprised my family with my open-mindedness, and spoke to my wife and spoke to my children. And they were, quite blown away, and he was quite blown away at the fact that he could change his mindset, which was really, really positive. 2 weeks after that happened, he rang me again and said, I just wanted to share this with you, Jodie, because I thought, you'd like to hear the feedback. I said, okay. He said, well, last night my son came out, and he told me he never felt safe to come out to me because of my previous views. And as he was telling me this story, I was getting choked up, he was getting choked up, and it was really quite powerful to listen to somebody who perhaps had a very different viewpoint beforehand, but attended these sessions and attended this particular session, and actually could change his mindset. So I often talk about EDI in the world of, it's not just about stats, it's not just about figures, it's about changing hearts and minds. And this is what allyship is all about. So just moving on to the Respect Awareness e-learning package. So this was launched at the same time as the Allyship program. It's an e-learning package that includes, it talks about the 7 respect principles, which I showed earlier, but includes 7 lived experience videos that are stories that were shared by colleagues, but were performed by actors because we wanted to protect their identity. So the videos are real experiences from staff. And they range from open discrimination to microaggressions to inappropriate banter. And as of present, over 2,000 staff have completed the training. It's really quite overwhelming because, obviously that's over 30% of our IT-enabled workforce. There is a paper version as well. So if you've got colleagues that don't access a computer or don't access a device, there is a paper version to be able to share with colleagues that has the same information. And the software is accessible because it's got text-to-speech software and it's got closed captions on the videos. So those are the things that we can roll out, obviously, to share with partners and as part of rolling the Allies network out to the place. And finally, we have the Respect Information Hub. So this is a purpose-built SharePoint site that effectively, if you've used SharePoint before, it acts as a website. So this is where everything and anything that is EDI related sits on. So this includes EDI useful documents, policies, everything else. It's got a calendar of events, which has significant dates for training. It has links to training and awareness sessions, and it has also more information about the Respect Allyship program, which is what we're talking about today. So I've just done a few screenshots of the how it looks. So this is the calendar events. This is just one of the pages. So as you can see, if you look down the left-hand side, it follows the principles of rights, equality, speak up, and has different information. And we're moving now on to the questions. And I'm going to stop sharing screen because when I share, I can't see anybody's faces or any questions. So hands up even. So if we start thinking about the 2 questions that we've posed, and this is the opportunity for you to ask questions or to have we can have a conversation. So I'll stop sharing screen.
Thank you, Jodie.
Does anybody have any questions or comments to start off with?
We're relatively quite a short, small group, so people can come off mute if you would prefer. So if nobody's got any questions to ask, perhaps we can start with just how, based on what Jodie's basically just taught or ran through, how do you see this particular programme being implemented in your organisation? Do you see any challenges with it, or any specific things that you might need from us to enable you to be a Trailblazer site? Thank you, Jenny. So Jenny just put in the chat, I'm in a quite loud office, but so she's typing, but she said, I know you mentioned all local authority areas. Will that include schools? Jodie, do you want to take this one?
Yes. So yeah, that's part of the conversation. So we've started a conversation with various people. We need to bring people into this as well, that we are looking to do effective. I won't call it I call it a light version for schools, because I think, allyship in schools is so important. I mean, I flash back to we've all had personal experience when we were at school, but if we had an allies network within the student body and within the faculties within schools, then how powerful could that be for, tackling bullying, tackling discrimination, raising awareness? It kind of goes back as well to what Charles said about education, because often we need to educate people while they're young, because they've got, that's where young minds are moulded. So there is a piece of work that we're starting to look at how this could work in schools as well. And that'll be all schools across Bradford. Does that answer the question?
Thanks, Jenny. Great question. I'm not sure. Would it be worth just, if you put in the chat even, or if you want to come off mute, just letting us know what organisation you're from? Because it'll just give us an idea of, what kind of what sector you're in.
Zara, you know, I can never be quiet, so I'll speak. I think it's a really great initiative. Allyship is something that I want to roll out within my own organization, because we did some manager training as a first step, but now we want to roll that out to all colleagues, and kind of the pillars and foundations they've talked about, I can almost implement like and use that, so it saves me doing the work, and that's brilliant. And I think this is where I think this program could be really powerful, because a lot of organizations on different parts of the journey, so it depends on the culture of your organization and how far you've taken the EDI work. And part of this is I would work with my L&D team to kind of bring that to life, and the shared experiences and the lived experiences I think are the most powerful stories. So the story you said would resonate more than a PowerPoint presentation being delivered by someone. And you know what it's like with these training sessions. You know, I come to this a big part because Zara is really inspirational for me, because from my perspective, I know she's passionate about it. She's getting things done. So I'm going to join that network. And I suppose with EDI, it is like that. It's about engaging people. And I think if we, and one of my biggest challenges is getting people to share the lived experiences. So I'm confident talking about as a male Muslim straight person, and I can talk about allyship, but I'm an EDI lead. So obviously I'm going to talk the language. And I think if we can find a way of bringing those stories to life, and that can be implemented in any allyship training, I think that would be a really great starting point, because once you start sharing one story, then other people then get confident in that. And I think that is one of the biggest barriers I find in EDI work, because it's getting the people that are not comfortable speaking about it, the one that kind of are engaged and are really open and like me, don't shut up. It's fine. So I think if we can find some resources, and again, because this is a collaborative effort, and hopefully if we develop an allyship network, you'll have a bigger pool of people who might be willing to share their image and their stories and things like that, then we can pull that into any training. And I think that will really bring that to life. So that would be my, I suppose, a big ask from my, I know it's a big ask, but actually for me, embedding in, because a big part is when you do a training session, you go on a YouTube link and it's a random American, and Americans are already really great at talking about stuff like this, aren't they? But actually, if it's a person from Bradford, how powerful is that? Or a person from Yorkshire in my case, because I'm covering the whole of Yorkshire. So I think it's that element, I think, is something that will make this more unique for us as a Yorkshire place.
Just to jump in before we move on to the next one, and I just want to give you that assurance, Minu, that when I started this, one of the things that I've always done, and I will always share my own lived experience. So I share lived experience stories from my own perspective. And I think the one nice thing, it's exactly what you said, is once somebody, you know, feels confident enough to share their story, then other people do that. And the great thing about the allyship sessions is that's, you know, they often, the people that deliver that from the voluntary sector have their own lived experience, and then they share that story, and then it gives that almost the people, the attendees to these sessions, I was going to use the word permission, but the confidence to then share their own. And that's the snowball effect. So I can spend the next 15 minutes talking about the number of people that have come forward, people that have come out of work, people who've disclosed that they have a hidden disability because they've now felt confident. So it's changing within the council, and what we want to do across the place is changing that culture to say, you know, people want to feel like they belong. They want to feel that they can be the true selves at work. And the more that people do it, it's the snowball effect. So I think, you know, I can certainly say from the council perspective, and it has happened. So if we can do it across the place, brilliant. Absolutely.
So I've got lots of other additional inputs, but I'm gonna just pick up the hands first and then go to the chat, and then we can round up. So John, are you happy to come off mute to share your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, I'm John. I work for the City of Culture team. I'm the volunteer program lead. So we have been talking to Zara previously, and Jodie, I think you're in the email chain, I think, as well, with my colleague Georgie, just about offering like training for volunteers, like as a package. And it'd actually be great to get the staff involved as well, the BD25 staff, because we're still hiring people at the minute. So we're sort of basically like a startup business. So there's a lot of training that needs to be done. But I was just wondering, like, how much of the training is sort of like bits that we can pull from it. Do they have to do all of it, or can they sort of go into that that portal and just sort of pick and choose bits that they want to do?
Yeah, so how the allyship works for the staff and the council is that the allyship sessions, they can attend whichever sessions they feel they want to attend. What I will say is, and Zara, you like my terminology in this, I call this the Lego brick approach. So we'll provide the tools, and for every respective organisation, and it's something that you said before about, everybody's at a different point in their own organisations. So some people have, cracked it, or some people have done a huge amount of work. Some people have done some work. It's all different spaces. So the great thing about the allyship program and the tools that are around it, you can build it as you want to build it. So I'll give you an example. So you may want to create the allies network. So you might want to offer it to all your staff to say you can attend these training sessions. That could be a starting point. And then at some point further down the line, you might want to adopt and build the e-learning package. So there's all sorts of options where people can do things. And obviously I'm aware that because we've had the email chain about the volunteers, and that's something that we can offer out to the volunteers as well. The great thing as well is we do all the stuff by teams, so that means that we're not dragging people into the office necessarily, so it's much more fluid in that way. And obviously the idea is to scale up the allyship that exists so that there's lots of opportunity for people to attend these sessions.
Thanks,
That's
Jodie.
great.
So,
Thank you.
thanks, John, and a great question as well. And I'll add a couple of extra things at the end too, but let me just go to Charles, because Charles also been waiting patiently with his hand up.
Thanks, Zara. I think a couple of things for me. One is around change, and the other one is about actually and cultural change. I think some of it is about organizational culture and how you shift the organizational culture. And another point is a point that was made by someone I worked with many moons ago, was about the right to be me. And I think there's a really important bit for me within this kind of whole work is about how we normalize that. So I think sometimes when we package things, people think, oh, I need to get the words right, I need to do this, need to do that. And it's about how we get to a point of normalization so that people actually can be themselves. And that you don't need a textbook, or you don't need an almanac to tell you exactly what you need to do. It's about how you feel about that. And that's the point, I think, about education, because once you find your own level, then you address things from your own perspective, and that's where the difference comes in and the value comes in as well.
Absolutely.
Really great point, Charles, as well. And I just think sometimes we are not comfortable having some of those uncomfortable conversations, and actually we're almost like push away difference. I think what this gives us is obviously an opportunity to look at it from that perspective, but also taking that intersectional approach. We can see where all those similarities are as well, because we will have them across. I just wanted to touch a couple of things, which I think no one's asked the direct question, but I think based on what people have asked and comments that people have made, I think some of you have alluded to some of these questions. So I just wanted to touch the time allocation bit, because and I'll hand back to Jodie on this one, but Jodie doesn't do this as his full-time job. So Jodie's not an EDI lead in his organisation. He's done Respect Allyship Programme based on the fact that he's passionate about this, and his day job is a senior data analyst, so he only allocates a day a week on this. But all the central resource we've built can be passed on to an organisation to access, so there's very little input. So I'm just going to hand over to Jodie just to talk a little bit how that works and how that might impact on you. I'm just thinking about Munir for you in particular, and maybe John in terms of City of Culture. What does that look like in terms of that organisation?
Yeah. So yeah, thank you, Zara. So yeah, I have a full-time day job as well as doing this. I'm also, just to add to it, I'm also the co-chair for the LGBTQ+ staff network within the council. So I've got a lot of hats. So what I want to provide, firstly, I want to provide people with reassurance, because one of the questions that will always come up is about, and you've touched on this, Zara, about people's capacity, how are people going to find time to do this? So from two perspectives, from the EDI perspective, then obviously I'm now effectively seconded to Zara a day a week, and I will support you to do this. So it means that you're not having to do everything from scratch. The nice thing about the allyship program and how it's been built into Respect, I go back to my Lego brick approach. It's there. It's just about working with the partners and with the different organizations to build it into your own organization. And I can assure you that, from a time frame point of view, from the EDI lead capacity, it will be minimal, thankfully. A lot of it will be just engaging with staff and just getting people on board. That's the other parts of it. We probably will take a lead on ourselves around the allyship. From the staff perspective, it's an hour a month. So when people say to me, oh, I'm not sure I've got time to do this. Well, actually, at most, it's an hour a month. So the sessions run monthly. They're all an hour long. Each session, and I'm not just saying this because, I manage this, but every single session that we've done, you saw the number of different sessions we've completed, the feedback's been incredible. And it's, I'll give you another example. We did the neurodiversity training, and a lady contacted me afterwards and said, she didn't even know what the neurodivergent conditions were, but she had a young son who was struggling with maths, and they talked about dyscalculia in the session. So if you know, dyscalculia is similar to dyslexia, but it's numbers rather than words. Her son was struggling with maths. She's 10 years old at primary school, struggling with maths. They got him a private tutor, it didn't help. And she recognised dyscalculia in her own son. So she had him assessed, and now he's been confirmed he has dyscalculia. So now he's got support. So the impact on the sessions is huge. So what I want to provide everybody in the room reassurance that, it's not a case of all these tools are there. I'm going to create a toolkit and working with colleagues to co-produce a toolkit to how to build this into your own organisation, and we'll support you every step of the way. So if you want to build part of it, some of it, that's fine. So hopefully that provides some reassurance that we're not going to just throw things at you and go, right, here you go, get on with it.
And then there's just a couple of other things that I think might be worth mentioning as well is just based on the people in the room. So your organisation can be a trailblazer, and I think Moniz put a comment in there about potentially being a kite mark of some sort. So your organisation will be a trailblazer site, and you might get something around that recognises it. But the other thing as well is that if your organisation's too small, individuals can sign up to become allies. So that's something that we're exploring, particularly for the BCS. So if your organisations are very tiny, then you may not want to sign up as an organisation. You just might want to sign up to the allies. But the allies network is going to give a lot of that additional support, and you're going to get a chance to talk to lots of other organisations that are either trailblazer sites or allies themselves. And it's that cross-fertilisation and good practice sharing that you'll get. So I think that's going to be a really important part. I also just wanted to mention, which I think is also really important, besides all the incredible work that Jodie has already done around the online events and the e-learning, these are also available in paper format as well. So, I don't know whether you just want to talk a little bit about the accessibility, Jodie, just for people who might think, can't do online, or my shift is too late and I can't get on it. How would that work for people?
So we have obviously, you may not be aware of this, about 30% of our workforce within the organisation don't have access to a laptop. So, but people can sign up to be allies, because once the sessions have completed, the trainer, the facilitator, whatever you want to call it, they provide a paper version that covers all the salient points. So that is then shared with the allies as well. So regardless of whether from a technical point of view they can't attend the session, or from an actual capacity point of view they can't attend the session, they'll still get the information. I mean, obviously the benefit of attending the session is that you can get to ask questions. The sessions are interactive. They're not just, I think, I can't remember who said it earlier about you know, in the EDI world, sometimes it's just people just talking at you. And it's not. These are the point of the sessions is to have that level of interactiveness so that people can ask questions. I'll give you a very brief example. The very first session we did was transgender and non-binary awareness. It's still a sensitive topic worldwide, and people went to that session asking questions that perhaps in an office space was perhaps inappropriate, or felt that they couldn't ask that, but the person that delivered the training was a transgender man himself and was quite open to those questions, and often that's the bit that changes hearts and minds. So I think that's really important to kind of mention. So regardless of where, you know, from an organizational point of view, and regardless of any organization, there'll always be availability to staff to be able to share this information. So, you know, as Zara alluded to, some of our VCS organisations, we had was it Healthwatch on yesterday?
Healthwatch, yeah.
They've got 4 staff. So it's kind of like, it doesn't matter whether you've got 4 staff or 4,000 staff, you can be part of this. So it's really important that and I do spend a lot of time reaching out to the hard to reach areas in the council. So I did 2 presentations to our Bradford Alhambra Theatre staff, and they've signed up to be allies and they get sent the information. So it's kind of really, it's becoming really powerful. And just very quickly, because I wanted to say this before and I forgot, but linking to what you said, Charles, it is about changing the culture. I'm so proud of the fact that I get people on a daily, weekly basis come to me and say, I've changed my mindset. I said earlier, I had an email yesterday to say I've got a neurodivergent from a colleague saying I've got a neurodivergent condition that I've kept quiet for 20 years. I've now told my manager, and my manager's fully supporting me. So it means that people are actually getting that confidence to be themselves, exactly what we're trying to achieve. So I think, I can only go by what's happened, in the council, but I can see this upscaling, across the district.
So thank you, Jodie, for that. And then I just want to pick on the 2 comments and questions that were in the chat. So just going to Jenny's mention about the organisation Go Higher West Yorkshire, which is University Connect. She mentions that she's got a membership of 13 higher education providers across West Yorkshire, 30 schools and colleges in the network. So just to say, University of Bradford have expressed an interest in becoming an Allyship Trailblazer site. So we are continuing conversations with them, but perhaps Jodie could link up with Jenny afterwards, because I think great resource of just trying to get out to more places. So we can have a conversation. And then Frances has just put in, obviously works in public health in the council, but her question is how can she be involved in this capacity with all the promotional work and connections she's got across. So I would say, Frances, it'd be great if we can just promote what we've got in terms of, we'll send out the information pack. Maybe that's something that you can send out to partners, and maybe a bit of a conversation with Jodie afterwards, because you can individually, if you haven't already signed up as an ally within the council, and you can get involved and access to all of that support. And you, of course, won't be treading on anybody's toes. We can make sure that we're working together on that. So can I just end with just the last slide, just the next steps? Because I think the main key thing we want, it looks like all of you are really quite excited to be involved and to embark on this journey with us. What we would really like is a conversation with a couple of you who are really ready to be one of our pilot areas. And we want to do that before May, when we officially launch next year around the National Staff Engagement Day, which I think is about the 24th of May. So we want to create a nice big kickoff around the 24th of May, bring lots of partners, and where we can showcase some of the work that's already has happened in our pilot sites. So if you'd like to be a pilot site, it means we will really be keen to mobilise and co-produce something quite quick with you and test this out. And then if you do, then obviously have a conversation with Jodie. And of course, you will get an invitation if you're interested, to be involved, to join us on the 24th of May next year, where you can hear a little bit more about what we've been doing. Is that all the next steps, Jodie? I think on the slide, I can't remember if there was anything else. But
yeah. So I've put my email address in the chat. So if you want to take a note of that, then anybody, as Zara said, who wants to be an early adopter, a pilot site, please do get in contact with me, and then we can have a conversation and see how that could work with your respective organisation. I'm going to send an information pack in the next few weeks out to all the organisations that obviously we've got, you know, people that haven't been able to attend. We've obviously recorded the session so we can share that. And in that information pack, I'll make sure we do a bit of a Q&A as well, because there is a lot of really valid, important questions that we do need to answer. But I'm really, really excited to kind of like work with the different partners and the different organisations. And it's really important to say this, that, you know, there isn't a one size. That's why I call it the Lego brick approach. There isn't a one size fits all for every single organisation. So if you want to be an early adopter, we can adapt that so that it works for your respective organisation. And I think that's really important, because we're not all going to get up to the same speed straight away. It's just about building that and starting those conversations.
Brilliant. And we've hit 12 o'clock. So I think that ends and concludes our time together. But I hope that we can see you shortly, straight after the session, whatever, but we'll continue on these conversations. So thank you so much for your time and your questions and your comments and general engagement. We'll hopefully look forward to seeing you guys soon. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.